Hey guys, today I'm going to be installing Linux Lite. Linux Lite is based on the Ubuntu LTS and it features the XFCE desktop environment. Linux Lite primarily targets Windows users. It aims to provide a complete set of applications to assist users with their everyday computing needs. It includes a full Office suite, media players, and other essential daily software. So, this particular version of Linux Lite that I'm going to install and review today was released about a week ago. It is version 3.8 beta. Again, 3.8 beta. So it is a beta release. So it could be buggy. So I'm going to download the ISO and install this inside a virtual machine. Okay guys, I've downloaded the ISO and I'm going to install this inside VirtualBox. When you first load up the ISO, you have our little boot menu here. And I'm just going to go ahead and boot directly into a live environment. So, excuse me there. I'm still waiting for the ISO to load us into the live environment. Sometimes these live environments take, as long as 2-3 minutes to load up. Alright, still waiting for the live environment to load. Alright, that took, I don't know, minute and a half for this to finally come up. But again, this is a live environment. We actually haven't installed, the operating system yet. So we're greeted with this little greeter program here. I'm just going to close that though. Alright, on the desktop here we have Install Linux Lite. I'm going to open that. That should launch the installer. Alright, and the installer has loaded. This is the Ubiquity installer, the standard installer in Ubuntu and most Ubuntu-based distros. Pretty straightforward installer. Preparing to install Linux. Download updates while installing Linux. Yeah, I'm going to take that on. Install third-party software for graphics, Wi-Fi, Flash, MP3, and other media. I'm definitely going to tick that on. That's going to give us all our third-party software that we're going to need to get a proper desktop experience. So I'm going to click continue. Alright, and we've come to the partitioning screen. We have the option of erasing the disk and giving Linux Lite the entire 15 gig hard drive of this virtual machine that I created. Or I can go down here and choose something else and manually set up some partitioning. I'm not going to do any manual partitioning. I'm just going to let Linux Lite erase the disk and take the entire hard drive of this virtual machine. So I'm going to click install now. Alright, and it's warning me it's about to format the drive and write to the disk. I'm going to click continue. Alright, time zone. It has correctly chosen the central time zone in the US for me. I've clicked continue. Keyboard layout is correctly chosen English US for me. I can test it out in the test field here. Alright, the keyboard is working as expected. I click continue. Alright, we need to create our user and create a password. I've already done that. We have options to log in automatically. I never tick that on. I like to be asked for a password when I log into my computer. We also have an option to encrypt our home folder. I'm not going to bother doing that in a virtual machine. I'm going to click continue. And the installation begins. I'm going to pause the video for a few minutes while the installation proceeds. Alright, the installation completed. It only took just a couple minutes, really, maybe 3-4 minutes. Now we reboot the machine to complete the installation. Alright, we've rebooted the machine and I have this grub prompt here. Basically, something went wrong with grub here. There was going to be something wrong with the partitioning. I chose erase disk and install Linux Lite, to give it the entire disk. Of course, that lets Linux Lite choose, how to set up the partitioning. I didn't do it manually. I let Linux Lite choose. Well, Linux Lite apparently screwed it up in some way, so I need to run through the install again, and this time I need to choose manual partitioning and actually create the partitions myself to make sure they're set up correctly. Anyway, so I'm going to run through the installation again. You guys won't have to watch all of this though. When I get to the part with the partitioning though, then I'll start the recording so you guys see what I do with the manual partitioning. Okay, I've run through the installation program again. I've gotten back to the partitioning page here, and this time instead of erasing disk and installing Linux Lite, just letting it set up the partitions itself, I'm going to choose something else and manually partition just to make sure everything is right, because obviously something wasn't right the first time. Grub definitely did not install properly. It looks like by default Linux Lite is going to create a swap partition the same size as the amount of RAM I give this virtual machine. I'm giving this virtual machine 6 gigs of RAM. It wants to create a 6 gig swap partition. I'm going to delete that. That's just wasted space inside this virtual machine. I'm just going to create one 15 gig partition, extended 4 partition, and put it on the mount point as root, make it bootable, and that's it. So I'm going to choose the swap partition here. I'm going to delete it. Alright, now we have that 6 gigs of free space. I think I can change this disk here, and then I'm just going to give it all of that free space. We're just going to have one 15 gig drive. By default, that SDA1 partition was set to do not use the partition. This is what caused the grub problem. It needs to be set to external for journaling file system. We also need to tick this on, format the partition, and then no mount point was set. This is also a problem. It needs to be set to root. So, okay, continue. Wait a minute or so. Alright, and now we have one partition, extended 4, set up on /dev SDAA. Or SDA1, excuse me. Format the drive. Mount point is root. Installed now. Everything should work now. Again, we get our warning about formatting the drive. So I'm going to wait a couple more minutes for the second install to complete. I won't gripe too much about the installer not installing the grub bootloader correctly. Again, this is a beta version of this particular software. This is Linux Lite 3.8 beta, so some bugs, again, are to be expected. Alright, and the second installation has completed. I'm about to reboot the machine, and let's see what happens. Alright, so I rebooted the machine after this second installation. Grub installed just fine, the bootloader, and we get to a login manager without a problem. So we were able to navigate that little hurdle. Alright, the Linux, the VirtualBox guest editions working correctly here in Linux Lite. I set the desktop resolution here to 1600 by 900 for this review here. We're going to log into our XFCE desktop environment here. Alright, and we're greeted with our little Welcome to Linux Lite greeter. We have 3 columns of information here. In the left hand column we have Start Here, and everything is, all these buttons are blue. This is what you need to run as soon as you complete the installation. The first thing says Install Updates. Clicking this button will update the system. I'm not going to bother doing that on this video. Then you have Install Drivers. That's to install your video drivers. You guys that are installing this on physical hardware, this is where you would install your proprietary NVIDIA drivers, AMD drivers. Those of you doing VirtualBox installs, this may be where you need to get the VirtualBox drivers installed too. Then you have setting a restore point. So this is restoring from a backup. And lastly, you have installing language support. So I'm not going to bother doing any of that on this review here. I'm just going to close the greeter. Matter of fact, I'm going to tick this off so it doesn't appear again. So I'm just going to go through my standard review here with Linux Lite. I'm going to go through the XFCE menu, show all the programs installed by default. So under accessories we have our application finder, archive manager, backups, the backup utility. Let's check that out. Looks like It is the standard backup utility found in mainline Ubuntu, which is a GNOME utility, I believe. It's called Deja Dupe. Really nice backup tool. Continuing under the accessories category here in the menu, we have our calculator, we have our file search utility, we have our file manager. The file manager here looks to be the standard file manager in the XFCE desktop environment called Thunar. This is Thunar 1.6.11. Also under accessories, we have our screenshot utility, we have our terminal. Let's see what terminal they're using. Being XFCE, you would think they're probably using the XFCE terminal, but they're not. They're using the LX terminal. This is the standard terminal in the LXDE desktop environment. So that's interesting. LX terminal is a fine terminal program, lightweight, minimal. But so is the XFCE terminal, so I'm not sure exactly why they wanted to go with the LX terminal over the XFCE terminal, but either one's fine. Both of them are nice terminals. Also under accessories, we have our text editor, our plain text editor. And that text editor is LeafPad. Again, LeafPad is the text editor in the LXDE desktop environment. Mousepad is the text editor in XFCE, so they're using some LXDE utilities rather than all the standard XFCE utilities. Under graphics, we have GIMP installed by default. GIMP is our free and open source alternative to something like Adobe Photoshop. GIMP is really one of the best free and open source pieces of software out there. It is it really solves a problem in Linux. A lot of people stay on Windows and stay on Mac because of Adobe Photoshop. GIMP, although it's not Adobe Photoshop, it's close enough to, you can do what you need to do for the most part in GIMP. Alright, also under graphics, we have our image viewer. We also have our scanner utility for scanning documents. Under internet, we have Firefox as our default browser. Let's see what version of Firefox we're using. Appears to be Quantum. It appears to be one of the latest ones. Yeah, Firefox 55.0.2. Okay, let me close that out. Alright, back to the menu. Under internet, we also have our network connections. Support, it says get support online for Linux Lite. Let me open that. Let me see exactly what that takes us to. That takes us to the Linux Lite forums. So that's pretty cool. Also under internet, we have Thunderbird as our email client. Multimedia, we have our CD DVD burner. Let's see what burning utility they're using. XFBurn. XFBurn is the disk burning utility in the XFCE desktop environment. Also under multimedia, we have our VLC media player. VLC is probably the best video player available in Linux. Can also be used to play audio. It works fine as a music player. They don't have a dedicated music player installed by default. VLC, I guess, it handles both movies, video, audio. So we also have our volume control here. Under My Computer, we have basically this is our file manager that it opens up at various places within our directory structure: documents, downloads, home, music, pictures. Under Office, we have 3 of the LibreOffice programs installed by default. We have the word processing program, which is called Writer. We have our presentation program, which I believe is called Presentation. I could be wrong about that. And then we have the LibreOffice spreadsheet program, which I know is called Calc. Then we have our PDF viewer. Then we have Settings. Settings is About Me, accessibility, appearance, and all of that. We have the Settings Manager here, which is like a control center. Again, it shows all the stuff from that settings menu, but here in an easy to navigate way here in this window with all these icons. I may come back to the settings menu here in just a second. Under System, we have Create System Report. Create a detailed system report of your computer. That's cool. We have disable auto login, enable auto login, install remove software. Let's launch that. Okay, this is the Synaptic Package Manager. That's kind of cool. I really like the Synaptic Package Manager. For those of you that want a graphical package manager, Synaptic is pretty good. Anybody that's running a Debian-based or an Ubuntu-based Linux distro, Synaptic is probably something you want to install. Alright, also under System we have Lite Software, which is a tool for easily installing and removing software in Linux Lite. Let's see what that's about. It's asking for root password, of course. Anytime you're installing or removing software, you have to be root. Okay, it's updating our software sources. Okay, and now it's asking me, do I want to install software or remove software? I'm going to choose install software. Let's see what happens. Okay, it launches this little program, and it looks like it's giving me a list of things I can install here. Everything from Audacity, Dropbox, FileZilla, all the way down near the end of the list, VirtualBox, Wine. So that's pretty cool. Let me close that out. Also under System we have Lite Tweaks. Tweak and clean your system. Let's see what that is. Okay, Lite Tweaks. We have options for Boot Up Fix, which restores the boot splash to Linux Lite. We have Clear Memory, Default Web Browser, Display Disk Usage, Firefox Cache, Hibernate Suspend, Hostname, Kernel Installer, Kernel Remover, Locate Large Files. We have Package Cache, Package System Repair, Whisker Menu. So, you know, a little bit of tweaking you can do to the system. And finally, under System, we also have Network Share Settings, NTFS Config Tool, our partitioner. This is probably gparted. It is. That's the gparted partition editor. Also under System, we have our Network Config, Panel, Power Manager, Session and Startup, Window Manager, Workspaces, Window Manager Tweaks. Alright, I'm going to right click on the desktop and I'm going to choose Desktop Settings. Let's check out what wallpapers are installed here in Linux Lite by default. They have some really gorgeous wallpapers here. Just beautiful photos here. Wow, these are some really nice wallpapers. Of course, you got some with the Linux Lite logo here. Got two polar bears here hugging. Isn't that cute? Some flowers, some ocean scenes, desert, city at night, more ocean stuff, waterfalls. Really beautiful wallpapers. I know this is kind of a minor thing to some folks, but honestly, for your typical computer user, really theming and wallpaper is everything. So I'm going to go back to this one here, this waterfall one. And that's a really gorgeous wallpaper. I'm just going to leave that on. Alright, back to desktop settings. We also had some customization we can do to our menu and to icon like sizes and single click to activate items, show hidden files on the desktop, that sort of thing. I'm going to go back to the settings manager here. Under appearance, let's see what kind of themes we have. The default theme that you're seeing here, let me open the file manager. This is called the Arc theme. Arc is a very popular theme here in Linux. This here is the Arc Dark theme. You know what, I like that. I'm going to leave that on. Other themes that were available here, the Adwaita theme, which is the default GNOME shell theme, is also installed. A few other themes. Under icons, we have the Faenza Dark theme. That is the default icon theme here in Linux Lite. Pretty nice icon set. I'm going to leave that on. The only other icons are the Adwaita theme, which is the default GNOME icon theme. I hate that icon set. It's hideous looking. And the default Ubuntu icon theme, the Humanity theme. It's alright looking, but it's orange. You gotta like the color orange to like the Humanity theme. Alright, also in the settings manager we had options to configure our file manager, our window manager, our workspaces, display, mouse, keyboard. Under system settings, we also have our firewall configuration, the Lite DM configuration. Lite DM was the login manager, you know, where you type in your username and password to log in to the XFCE desktop environment in this case. We have session and startup, which controls all your auto start programs, you know, everything that launches on startup when you first log into XFCE. We have a button here called Lite Upgrade. I guess this is to upgrade the system. So that's all the settings manager. Overall, what do I think of Linux Lite 3.8, the beta version? Well, the install is a little buggy, obviously. That first install where I just kind of let it do its own thing, you know, well, it broke doing its own thing. But again, it's beta. I'm not going to fault Linux Lite too much on that. I'm going to revisit this when the official Linux Lite 3.8 comes out. But what do I think of it? Well, it's based on the Ubuntu LTS, so it's rock solid stable. It uses the XFCE desktop environment, so lightweight, minimal, fully functional though, and it includes a nice suite of software by default. Being based on the Ubuntu LTS, Ubuntu 16.04, let's see what kernel they're running. Alright, the kernel version is 4.4, so that kernel is almost 2 years old, but again, it's based on Ubuntu 16.04, which itself is almost 2 years old, so, you know, kind of an older kernel, but again, it's a stable system. You know, this is not going to be some bleeding edge distro, but all in all, I give Linux Lite 3.8 beta a thumbs up. Check it out, guys. Peace.